Bill Spencer had always prided himself on reading people, reading their lies, their fear, their weakness. But there was something about Luna that had slipped under his radar, something toxic that had been growing in silence. He had once protected her, once called her potential. But the girl he once backed had turned into something else entirely. Unhinged, ruthless, uncontrollable, and worst of all, dangerous. The shift didn't come suddenly. It crept up on him through whispers, through the trail of scorched relationships and broken boundaries she left in her wake. The incident with Steffi's death and the rumors about Luna's involvement had already created tremors. Though the legal case had yet to formally link her to the crime, Bill had eyes and ears everywhere. And what they showed him was not the portrait of a grieving outsider, but of someone spiraling into vengeance, manipulation, and destruction. It was time to cut her off. He did it without a word. One morning, every account tied to Luna, every investment, every trust fund she'd manipulated or coerced into her control, went dark. Cards declined. Bank access revoked. Business partnerships frozen. Within hours, Luna realized something was wrong. Within a day, she knew it was Bill. Then came the real strike. Bill didn't just cut off her money. He went public. In a surprise media appearance streamed live across every Spencer-owned platform, he addressed what he called a disturbing pattern of behavior involving a young woman once trusted by this family. He never said her name. He didn't have to. The world already knew who he meant. The media didn't wait. They swarmed like sharks. Footage of Luna outside the Forrester estate surfaced, grainy but damning. Rumors about her involvement in Steffi's death reignited. Old scandals bubbled back up. Every whisper she thought she buried came roaring into daylight. She was cornered, humiliated, and stripped of her resources, her image, her mask. But Luna didn't shatter. She didn't beg. She evolved. Betrayal had always been her crucible, and this betrayal, coming from the man who once saw her as a protégé, was nuclear. She didn't lash out publicly at first. That wasn't her style anymore. The new Luna didn't throw tantrums. She plotted. Quietly. Precisely. She disappeared for 2 days, then returned with the kind of smile that meant something was going to burn. She knew Bill's enemies. All of them. She had the receipts. The confidential deals. The blackmail documents. The affairs. The offshore laundering trails no one dared mention. And she wasn't afraid to use them. Luna began leaking pieces of Bill's empire into the digital underground. Anonymous drops sent to reporters, bloggers, rival magnates. She didn't hide her fingerprints. She wanted him to feel it. At the same time, she orchestrated a full-blown character assault. Anonymous interviews, manipulated videos, rumors of abuse, insider sabotage, all engineered to destabilize Spencer Publications from within. Suddenly, Bill wasn't the predator anymore. He was the prey. His board turned on him. Stock prices dipped. Political allies distanced themselves. But worse than the business damage was the psychological one. Luna knew exactly where to cut. She spread rumors of secret paternity questions, suggesting Bill might not be Liam's father after all. She reignited stories about his manipulative past with Brooke and Katie. She played on every insecurity, every skeleton. And she didn't stop. Bill found himself waking up to headlines that questioned his sanity, his morality, and his relevance. News anchors once loyal to his paycheck began questioning if his time had passed. Sponsors walked. Even Wyatt, who had always backed him, began to ask, "Are you sure Luna was the problem?" But it wasn't just the business falling apart. It was his image, his control. And Bill Spencer without control was a man unarmed. He tried to strike back. Hired private investigators. Threatened legal action. offered hush money to media outlets. But Luna had anticipated every move. She stayed 2 steps ahead, exposing anyone who dared cover for him. It wasn't revenge. It was obliteration. And just when he thought it couldn't go further. When Luna had already torched his fortune, his name, and his influence, she hit him with the final blow, a live broadcast on a rogue media channel where she told everything. The grooming, the manipulation, the favoritism, the betrayal, the breakdown. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just looked at the camera and told her truth with brutal clarity. And people listened. Because for all her darkness, Luna was compelling. Charismatic. Dangerous, yes, but undeniably magnetic. And Bill realized too late, he hadn't just cut her off. He had weaponized her. He didn't shut down a liability. He unleashed a force of destruction he could no longer contain. Now, Luna walks free, financially broken, publicly vilified, yet still untouched by the law. The evidence tying her to Steffi's death is still circumstantial. Remy disappeared shortly after the investigation reopened, leaving nothing behind. Luna's cancer, once terminal, has shown signs of remission, though she claims she's still on borrowed time. Bill sits alone in his office now, staring at the skyline that used to symbolize his dominance. He thought he was stamping out a spark. Instead, he lit a fuse. And now he waits, quietly wondering what's next, checking every headline, every alert, every shadow in the corner of his empire. Because Luna is still out there, and the storm she brings is far from over. When Luna fired the gun, chaos erupted. The blast cracked through the Forrester estate like lightning splitting the sky. In a moment of sheer unpredictability, Sheila Carter, the same Sheila who had haunted Los Angeles for decades with her schemes, lies, and manipulations, threw herself in front of the bullet meant for Bill Spencer. The man she had once clashed with, conspired against, even threatened, now lay behind her, stunned, as her body absorbed the full impact of Luna's shot. Sheila fell to the floor, bleeding, her breath ragged but steady, her eyes locking onto Bill's. The shock of it all sent waves through everyone present. Bill stared at Sheila, stunned. He had spent years building walls against people like her, people who wielded love and pain like weapons. And yet here she was, shielding him from death, giving up her body without hesitation. The questions flooded in instantly. Why? Was this redemption? Was it real? Or was it just another masterstroke in a lifetime of elaborate deception? News of Sheila's act spread like wildfire. Ridge was the first to confront the situation head-on. "She's manipulating you," he warned Bill coldly. "This is who she is. She stages moments like this. She scripts tragedy to look like love." But Bill, conflicted, remembered the way she looked at him as she collapsed. Not triumphant, not calculating, just human. Vulnerable. Hurt. Protecting him. At the hospital, Sheila lay in critical condition, drifting in and out of consciousness. Finn stood outside her room, caught between the boy he once was, the boy abandoned and lied to, and the man trying to make sense of this new version of his biological mother. Sheila had committed countless unforgivable acts, but she had also just taken a bullet for someone else. Not for herself. Not to escape. To save. That complicated everything. Steffi, meanwhile, was shaken. She had hated Sheila with everything in her. She had fought to keep her away from Finn, from their children, from their lives. Yet what she had witnessed was no illusion. It wasn't a stunt or a magic trick. It was a body crashing to the floor, protecting someone Steffi had loved once and perhaps still loved in a complicated way. Could this act shift everything? Could it stir sympathy in her toward a woman she had vowed never to forgive? Luna, racked with guilt, could hardly process what had happened. She had meant to protect herself, to protect Steffi. Sheila had appeared so suddenly, her presence always a threat, always a danger. But this time, Luna's fear had led to something that would shake the foundations of the Forrester, Spencer, and Finnegan families. She hadn't meant to shoot Bill, but in her panic, she had pulled the trigger, and now everything was upside down. Bill visited Sheila at her bedside. She was awake, barely, her voice a rasp. She managed one plea, whispered through the haze of pain and medication. "Finn, tell him. I never stopped loving him. I didn't do this to earn anything. I just wanted to be better." That sentence reverberated through Bill like an earthquake. For a man who built empires on power, trust was a rare currency. And now Sheila, of all people, was asking not for forgiveness, but simply for Finn's understanding. Katie, Brooke, and Ridge convened to assess the fallout. "This changes nothing," Brooke said firmly. "Sheila doesn't get a redemption arc. She doesn't get to rewrite history with a single act." But Ridge wasn't as sure. "Maybe not," he admitted. "But that doesn't mean others won't believe she's changed. And that belief, that hope, is dangerous." Meanwhile, Steffi found herself revisiting every moment she had spent protecting Finn from Sheila. Her life had been a war zone of emotional combat ever since Sheila re-entered their orbit. But this act, this selfless moment, refused to be ignored. She saw it. She felt it. And against every instinct in her, something cracked. Not trust, not forgiveness, but recognition. A person capable of that kind of sacrifice may not be beyond all hope. Finn was the final wall. Sheila's son. Her flesh and blood. He had rejected her, warned her away, stood between her and the life he built with Steffi. Now he faced a reckoning. Could he really deny her one moment of acknowledgement? One gesture of gratitude? She didn't ask for love. She didn't ask to be embraced. Only to be seen, for once, not as a monster but as a mother. He visited her in the early hours, when the hospital halls were quiet and the weight of decision bore down hard. He sat by her bed, his voice quiet. "You saved Bill's life. I won't pretend that makes up for everything. But it means something. I see it. I see you trying. But I can't forget who you've been either." Sheila's eyes watered, not with the manipulative glint of old, but with something more grounded, regret. She didn't press him further. She knew any move beyond this would unravel the moment. Instead, she just held his hand, weakly. That was enough. But outside the hospital, the world was not so still. Liam was furious. This is exactly how she works. She earns sympathy, and then she starts controlling people. First Bill, now Finn. Steffi's next. But hope countered, quietly but firmly. What if people can change? What if this is real? The question became a firestorm in LA. Talk shows, gossip sites, news coverage, all echoing the same uncertainty. Was Sheila Carter finally redeemed, or had she engineered her greatest deception yet? Psychologists debated her motivations. Pundits speculated whether Bill would begin to soften, whether Finn would fall into her grasp, whether Steffi would, in a moment of humanity, open a door that could never be closed again. Steffi couldn't stop replaying the moment. Sheila diving forward, the crack of the bullet, the sound of a body hitting the ground. In a city built on image, that one image refused to fade. She wasn't ready to forgive. But she wasn't sure she could hate anymore, either. And Finn, still torn, still wary, made a decision that would change everything. He called a press conference, standing before the media with a prepared statement. "Sheila Carter has done terrible things. Many of them to people I love. I have not forgiven her. I may never fully forgive her. But I recognize what she did. She saved a man's life. Not for glory, not for reward, because something in her changed. Whether that change lasts, time will tell. But today, I acknowledge that she is not the same person she was. Bill watched the broadcast from Sheila's room, silently. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just closed her eyes, as if, for the first time in her life, someone had really seen her. But redemption is a fragile thing. In the weeks that followed, Sheila's condition improved. So did her influence. Slowly, she became a presence again, not in grand gestures or confrontations, but in small, human moments. A conversation with Bill. A glance from Steffi that lacked the old venom. A moment with Finn that felt less guarded. Each step forward fueled speculation, anger, and hope in equal measure. Was Sheila Carter reborn, or had she simply mastered the most dangerous role of her life, the role of a mother seeking forgiveness? And if she had, who would pay the price for believing in her?